We know that our ancestors laid out for us in our very DNA the map of the universe, because our bodies, our physical bodies, are the evidence of that. You understand? The evidence of its majesty on earth as it is in heaven, literally. You know what I mean? So, with that being said, we live a planet. What is the definition of a planet? Does anybody know? Okay, it's a plane or a realm, yes. What's another name for it? What's another definition of it? Terra, yes, that's what it is in Latin. But I'm thinking more from the original understanding, or what they prefer, or what they refer to it as. Okay, what I'm fishing for is they refer to a planet as a celestial body, right? That's what a planet is. It's a celestial body, correct? So, if it's a celestial body, that means it is a body in space, correct? Islam? Right. So, where is your body right now? I just told you that your body is the physical representation of all so-called universes and bodies outside. So, where is your body right now? It's in space. And if your body is in space, then does that not mean then that it is, or you are, celestial? You're not on the ground, right? So you then are a celestial body in space, which is the literal definition of a planet, right? So language is the demarcation line that puts us in the bind with it. Like, you ever notice anything dealing with money and stuff is always dealing with the C. Like, you got cash flow. You know what I'm saying? You got what's another version? Like redlining, which was a pirate term. Like, when you're in the red, right? That's a pirate term on the sea. Your vessel, right? When they tax the vessel, when they put you in a tarif, when they give you a tax, that's called a tarif, which is named after Tarif, the actual guy, the Moor, that laid that system out for them. You get what I'm saying? Right. Everything dealing with money like that is always like dealing with some sort of admiralty. So it's the same thing, like you said, with the celestial body, the planet. Now, after Reconstruction, these people decided that they were going to remake how the whole thing was, but that was only at the very top. Right? These are the white decoys that's about to take over after they had that meeting at Jekyll's Island, and after they had consolidated with what they referred to as the global King Alfred plan. So these guys, with the new system and all that was coming in, had to basically make secret everything that was out there before. So by the time they got to the 1945 after, and now they are surveying what they are now going to hide, break up, sell, put under another name, whatever, they wind up going out to the ocean and hitting a wall. That wall, you see what I'm saying, was so high that they could not deal with it. They didn't know how to circumvent it. While at the same time, they are implementing the modern day version of what we're living today in terms of the perception of the so-called blacks, the Negroes, the worldwide flip of how they're going to make us think, while at the same time trying to keep together this illusionary aspect of the planet that they Jesuits have been putting down. But this was the first time that they could actually go to these places and actually see, like, oh shit, this is what it is. So they got there. You see what I'm saying? And they couldn't do it. So they had to plant the flag and then get help from the same people that they was trying to be at war with. So they positioned this as an operation. This operation was the first NASA operation, technically. NASA existed now because Von Braun and all of the white decoy Nazis that had been under the Black Thule and the rest of them had took all that technology and through Operation Paperclip and Operation Odessa got brought over to the United States to take over the new decoy white supremacist King Alfred, creature from Jekyll Island government. Okay, so that was known as Operation High Jump because they couldn't jump over, they couldn't get over the wall. You understand? So they had to create a task force, which was all of the so-called Security Council nations that would contribute the technology to figure out how to do that. That's from this came the Antarctica Treaty. You understand? They're all hiding. This has to be hid because this is what proves what we're talking about in terms of the Earth being a realm and all this other stuff. So this was the precursor for NASA, right? So once they do that, they realize that in order to get over the wall, they have to create these new technologies to build these new type of buildings. So this is where the boom of the skyscrapers and all of this was happening throughout the different industrialized nations now. You see what I'm saying? And then the capital from all of that went into the black bag operations that they're using to try to figure out how to get above this ice wall or to at least get on top of it, right? So it gives you a different perspective of Michael Jackson when he was saying, too high to get over, too low to get under. You're stuck in the middle, and the pain is thunder, right? Right? The thunder, that relates to the operation because the dummy operation was called Operation Thor, right? So after that, they couldn't figure that out in 1946. So they get to about 1955. So now this is the time, 1955, remember, is when we here as Moors are going through the freedom coming from the repealing of the United States jurisdiction in Morocco, right? So they got to circumvent that, right? Get rid of that and get us to get into the civil rights thing, to get us also away from the Indian right thing, right? So all of this is happening to keep everybody away from the understanding of the expansion of what they refer to as the stationary Earth, operating as not just as a plane, right, but as a plane that exists on a multi-layered prism, right, that has land masses on the outside, where every planet that we see is the sun and moon of another planet. You see that in one of the other aspects of land masses that exists on the other side of that wall, and then on the other side of that wall, and so forth and so on. And then the density within that goes inward. Okay? So think of it like a Christmas tree. Mercury is at the top, which they call the North Star, which we went into class before last and found out that's actually really the South Star, right? So over the southern magnetic pole, because remember the map has got to be upside down to be seen accurately, which would then mean that it's actually due south, not north. So they couldn't figure that out while all that was happening. So they wound up actually reaching it, getting over to the top. And then once they got to the top, they reached the edge of what they refer to, what our ancestors referred to as the edge of the world. When you look at the Piri Reis map, right, which is the oldest circumnavigation map, right, for the pre-modern world that they still use today, done by the Moorish Turk, but back then Turkey was in what we call Tuscarora, which is North Carolina. Because remember, we're talking about the whole thing when it was together. It's together longer than it was apart, and therefore all the so-called oceans were also seen as rivers. So when you read in the Bible, they talk about the river of Jordan or the river of this. You got to understand that the river of Jordan may have flown through 2 continents that was conjoined. You understand? Instead of thinking again. But remember, the enemy always think apart, think of my map. So we don't see. So here on it, you see, they got to the top. See, this is the top of the ice wall. See? Look, they at the top. Remember, symbolism is their religion. There they are at the top. They finally got to the top of the ice wall to plant the base. See the base? Right? And what? They seen the emperor penguin, the giant penguins that wound up in Bugs Bunny cartoons. Remember the giant penguin? Remember him? He was always beating everybody up. And he had the whole city in Antarctica, remember? In Bugs Bunny? And he could be in the heat. Right? Then boom. So then they flying over it. This is them now trying to go over the fields. That's what the bars represent. And then here's the bees. So you know this is the royalty that they met and was told you can't come out here and do whatever. So this became known as Operation Deep Freeze because they had reached the end. They was frozen. They stuck in the middle. You see what I'm saying? And they pain was thunder. They couldn't get out. You understand? So they started dying and all of that up there. So they had to make it where nobody could go back unless they was a part of the ritual, unless they was a part of the scientific expedition, you know, whatever. And then that, 1955, 55, 60, 78, 4 years later, for being culture, because now they got to create a new culture to keep this out. Because remember, the black history they give you was that Matthew Henson, aka Taraji Henson's grandfather, allegedly, was the black man that got there. And he met the Alawites out there. They was like, we ain't seen you since Russia was running this. Because all the Russians was Asiatic. Read it. And remember, they got all of this from Russia. So all of this was really Tartaria. Remember that. Okay? So they reached the end. They can't, like you see the plane. I showed you the plane. So the plane is going, they setting up bases. They got to the top. The ice is so thick, they can't do nothing with. And they just done. They don't know what to do. So they send the probes, the planes, the AWACS, all of that way up, all as far as they could go, and then they reached the firmament. That's why they was frozen. That's why it was deep freeze. They was frozen. They couldn't get no higher. So what they got to do now is create a whole new culture around the idea of what we understand in space and technology and all of that stuff, the way we understand it now. To hide the biblical ramifications of knowing that we basically living in a giant plane instead of a spinning globe, the way that they projected. So naturally, 4 years later, they create the culture and boom, they create NASA. See? See how the pictures just shut it down. So now it's NASA, right? But what does NASA mean? To deceive in Hebrew. And remember, these are Kabbalistic, crypto, satanic, Jesuit Jews. And look what color it is. It's the color of the firmament. You see what I'm saying? Which is also the color of Freemasonry, blue, because they're concealing the true faith, the true reality, you see what I'm saying, of the world by putting a fork's tongue through it. And a needle, a suture. That's what this is. You ever been cut? You see the movies they do get shot, they get the suture, and then they stick it in, and it's curved, and then sew you up, and look the snake tongue going right through, right? And when you spell it backwards, it's what? Asan, which means the sun, to blind, right? So this is them now. They done set up NASA now, so now we got to get the hidden figures. We got to make it real. So now they start creating little junk spaceships and all of that, right? They're trying to figure out how to sell it to the public. Lance Armstrong, right? They getting everybody together. You know what I'm saying? They trying to unify the story, how everybody's gonna create a space program, right? That's why all the space programs got the Star Wars logo. Look it up. All of the space programs on Earth, you know what I'm telling you? On Earth have the Star Wars logo, including Space Force in America. Let's just listen to that. Space Force. It's like, so they all get together and a year later establish the lie. Now the lie is cemented. We're gonna block all knowledge of the firmament, all knowledge of the true schematics of the universe and all of that. We're gonna go with the old Copernican model, Newtonian models, you know, all of that garbage. We're gonna enforce the Venetian doctrine of discovery to be able to annex everybody that don't remember how to do it, and then cloud the title by getting people to participate in the feudal system. Hence, sovereignty. Sovereignty developed from the right of the sovereigns. Those sovereigns were the same so-called European melanated imperialist oligarchy that infused itself into world affairs by marrying into, to come out of the Dark Ages, the Moorish nobilities of the day. And so they, because they had always dealt with the Woodwose, which we'll get into in a second, in such a way to be able to breed them and utilize them to their advantage, and then sick them on other people. Like Mexicans know how to feed rats to get them to the size of like dogs. You know what I'm saying? And then in the old times, they said they used to feed them like that, and they cut them up and eat them, based upon they was being starved out by the Dons because they wouldn't pay the tribute because they was against Spain. So all of that plays into this in the establishment of the Arctic, Arctic, because that's what it is. It's antics. The Antarctic Treaty that basically says nobody can tell the real story. We all down with the Freemasonic secret now, and we're going to use this space thing basically to get everybody to get money. So now think of all the aeronautic schools. Think of all of these types of things. You know what I'm saying? That didn't exist up until NASA now. So now these are new electives and things that have to get integrated into these Ivy League colleges and high schools and things like that to make people believe that they can build rockets to actually go and walk on the moon or the place, on Mars or Jupiter or whatever, when these things are not even physically dense the way we perceive density. In order to really stand on them, we'd have to actually be in the fifth dimension. Then we could walk on it. You understand? Or we'd have to relegate our consciousness to the level that we could actually project ourselves, just like Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen, and then actualize a physicality due to the creation of some sort of oxygen situation that apparently doesn't exist, or that may, because anything that we're seeing, again, from the perspective of the earthbound situation is already happening, according to them, right? So by that rationale, we have already gone 365 days throughout the universe, around the sun. If it already happened, right? So if that's the case, then what are we counting? Something wrong. So these guys created this situation, and then now through the UN are able to create what we understand now as the modern world, and how what becomes nuclear energy and all that stuff. You understand? Because all of that is part of the science. All of that is the stuff that Aldous Huxley and Isaac Asimov and Arthur Clarke and Jules Verne and H.G. Wells, all the Freemasons, all, not one that's not. So in that, this is what leads to that. So you see how it looks like a big eye on a flag around this little part of Antarctica? Because this represents the wall. This represents all the flags, all the countries down with the secret, all circling down the drain, right? That's 1959. So this is NASA. So now this is the second year of NASA set up. NASA, again, the word which means to deceive, right? What is the motto of the Mossad? War by deception. See? So it all works out. So boom, they can't, it's an obsession now. So we got to get everybody as much money as possible to this endeavor to figure out how we're going to get out of this place and get back to Lucifer. So what we got to do is get everybody to give not only mental energy, but psychic energy to that. So this is when CIA comes in now and it starts doing all the psychotropic drugs, all of that, because they're trying to create what philosophers refer to as a Hieronymus machine. A Hieronymus machine is like you get in like like a box, and you just throw a bunch of stuff in it, and then you make something to do something that wouldn't exist properly, almost like you mentally make it happen. You know what I mean? So that's what they do. And then they create these machines to harvest this collective data and then stream it. Just like remember Batman with the Riddler, and how he had the TV joints, and they were sucking all of the psychic energy, the green psychic energy into the joint. So all of that gets tabulated, all of that gets consumed, while at the same time they are doing all the psychological programming and all that other type of stuff or whatever to keep everybody away from what they're really doing, which is again trying to figure out how to get out there. So they get allegedly, so this is an old story I heard from one of the elders in Islam, where they ran up on Elijah Muhammad one time, and there was a thing with them, and they stole his briefcase, which had the specs on the book that became the Theology of Time. And in some of his descriptions, they were able to use to make some things happen. Also, remember at the same time, the Nation of Islam was being courted by the Japanese government, which is why you see on the Muhammad Speaks the Mikado flag, which was the flag of the Imperial Japanese Empire at the very top, which is what brought them into situation with Hoover, another black man, Freemason, who wasn't feeling that. So you can go back and check that yourself. Look up the Mikado, and then go back and look at the original covers of the Muhammad Speaks. And at the very top, you see these two black hands in front of a red sun with rays. This is what brought them into the situations with the United States. because they was fearing that they was getting help from the Japanese Empire, which at the top again was all Moorish. So all of this is really happening with the people that don't know and the decoy. You understand? That's all under the 14th, 13th, whatever amendment. That's all functioning under that. So they gotta have a justification to use this bomb, to use this nuke that they trying to nuke the firmament with. They're trying to find a way to bust the bubble to get out. So here go Nagasaki, Hiroshima. See? That was known as Operation Fishbowl. We're nuking the firmament now. You know what I'm saying? So when Hillary Clinton did the speech and she said, we shot it 13 million times, but regards to what, we're still going to keep trying. This is what she's talking about. She's talking about trying to bust the joint to get into the celestial waters to take the fight to Allah personally. You understand? You also notice there's a phallus, right? Which means it is phallic, which means it's also a fallacy, right? Right? And then you see the two lions, because they lion, you see, next to it. They also look like dog heads, which is very symbolic. I'll show you why in a minute. Okay? And they did it in April, in Aries. See? Because they're using the energy of war. They're waging war against Allah by trying to blow up the ceiling of his basement. You know what I'm saying? And so that had to be masked. So let's drop the dummy nuke, right? The low yield joints on the Japanese, even though we at war with white Germans. You understand? You see how I was playing out? And then you got all these people around the world killing each other, all these people protesting the surface war, right? Because all projects had to be diverted to this. So ultimately, all the projects is dealing with this. The Hadrian Collider, all that stuff is dealing with how to bust through the realm. They already on top the ice wall. They there. But they can't really do nothing else because the edge of the firmament is messed up. There's people, and this may or may not be true, but you can check it out on the YouTube or internet or whatever, who was type in pieces of the firmament found on the ground. And you'll see this blue shard-like lapis lazuli type, royal blue type color. That's it. So they've been trying to bust through that for so long, and with all of the tension, that's why they always got to plan it with the rituals and all of that. So Operation Fishbowl, that happens, right? Because now the lie's cemented, and nobody's doing the knowledge, everybody's with the global tragedy. We don't understand, like, oh, the Vietnam War, all of this is happening. Woe is the world. But all of a sudden, here comes John, here comes Jack, and Jack is like, we're going to go to the stars. He said, because the answers to the truth, and this is there. And the speech is so inspiring that now they have to create a space agency. This is how the NASA thing, but that's the cover. That's all the cover from what they found out all the way back from Operation, the first one I mentioned. And so what they got to do, they got to go now with the lies. So now from this point on, we get the perspectives of the earth that coincide now with the first television broadcast. Isn't that interesting? Right? That all coincides with the civil rights situation and men being created equal, and now a whole new form of science is created. NASA And then it's all couched through communism. We got to beat the rest of space. You know what I'm saying? We got to stop that. We got to stop what's happening in Indochina. But the United States government at this time is not the United States government. It's all of these people working together. See what I'm saying? To alter the reality, to keep us from being able to expand. Because what's happening is the ice wall is breaking, which is making more land not only available, but it's getting closer and closer to the edge of the firmament. The more ice breaks and melts, creates new water, fresh water, you understand? New land, unearth the pyramids or whatever's out there, but it's also getting closer to the edge where now you can see it. That's what the aurora borealis and all of that stuff is. So eventually, what do? They got to put you in the moon. So they get Stanley Kubrick and George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and the rest of them together at Iron Mountain. Get the Kathy O'Brien and all of the sex rituals and parties and utilize all of that energy and then create the story for the moon landing, right? And then put that into the Apollo mission. Again, Apollo means what? Sun. Spelled backwards, Alopa, right? But look at the eyes. They're playing a joke on you. You know Groucho Marx? Look the two eyes in the nose. Remember when Groucho Marx would put on the eye in the nose? With the bald eagle landing on the moon. Which is physically impossible. So why would you use a physically impossible representation for something that you're trying to anchor into reality? The only way that that can happen is through a visual medium to produce the marketing to the brain that where the intelligence and the entertainment sector interrelate. So you're simultaneously being entertained by what you're seeing as real information and therefore accept it as such because you saw it and it made you feel good. So I'm not saying that the moon doesn't exist. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that going to the moon the way that these people is doable because it's within the same sphere as the earth and the sun. That's why we as Moors give respect to the sun, moon, and stars because it is under the canopy of Allah's majesty, which is the celestial cedar tree that we put on our flag, which represented the great elm as Sheikh Mexum and what they call Philadelphus, where the kings and the beys were crowned as lords of the Haudenosaunee, or what they call Algonquin Confederacy. Algonquin not being a people, but a dialect of those people who themselves were Muslim. And so these guys created the space program, as you see, and look, they give you also in the image the very true depiction of how Earth really is. Look how it's all under the same dome. You see? The Earth, the moon, the sun, all under the same dome, which means they're not outside. The eagle ain't out here. The ego is in the same place with everything else, so that means what? They didn't go nowhere. Why the ego? Because it's got a white body, it's got a black body and a white head. It's all jokes. It's all fake. That's what I'm saying. So the black woman that they said that designed the rover that is on Mars driving down Marcia Avenue or whatever, I'm not saying that she didn't design that. I'm not saying that the rover is not doing that. I'm just saying it's not doing it where they say that it's happening because it's physically impossible for them to do it. You mean to tell me if Caucasian people knew how to get to Mars for real, they would still be here messing with us? Please. Would you? You could go to Mars right now. But the caveat is you can't tell nobody. Would you go? Or would you be like, nah, I gotta tell my people? You go first and see. You know what I'm saying? So the overarching lie of the physical space that they give us is all based upon their like they feel trapped in the firmament. They feel trapped on Earth in this reality. Why? Well, because they, the proverbial they, came from a people that were isolated. You know what I mean? Extremely isolated for many thousands of years and were only, messed with or dealt with in the most harshest of circumstances. Really up until the what we call the late Renaissance period. All these pictures of the old Renaissance period they say was in the 12th century, 15th century, all these white people, all of that's fake. All of that stuff that they repainted, all the real so-called black stuff is the images they patterned those after. And created a whole, see, that's the thing. They justify what they do by creating a class of study to it. So this is where iconoclastism, this is where restorationism comes from. You understand? But they're restoring their image. They're restoring what they think they are. So the so-called elite through the Freemason thing tell them that they're Egyptian, tell them that they're this and that and all that, but they know that they're not. Not only that they're not, that they didn't even exist at the time that these people that they're portraying and acting like existed in the capacity they are now. So prevalent was their enslavement that we would put them on the money because they would get bagged up, you know what I'm saying, and then get put into servitude, shaved or whatever, and then civilized. And they themselves lived under the yoke of the so-called Vikings or Danes, which is short for dinar. The Vikings were Moors, Muslims. You could look up Viking jewelry with Allah written on it. So the image of the white Viking Thor, the way that they do it, like when you see it in Asgard, with the garb and all of that, just picture that with Asiatic folk. But there was a long history of the dog-headed men that existed and allegedly exist still to this day that were afflicted with something they call Hirsute or extreme hair growth. These things were called dog-headed men. This afflicts a lot of Mexicans. They'll have it in their face, all over their body. And these guys were a constant adjutant to the Moors in Europa. And so they found ways to deal with them. You know what I mean? But they existed for a long time. This is a Sumerian joint. I looked for another one because these lines kind of made me think it was a little detailed, but this was the oldest one I could find. That one. And so when you really get into the research on, let's say, the real origin of what we'll call the white male, you'll find that there was no place it really came from. So in order to find more analysis on that, you got to go into the mythology, because the natural history we know, even though genetically proven and proven time and time again, they still have the media to flip it up to act like we crazy or we racist, or we're trying to appropriate some sort of European culture when we're the oldest European brand. Yeah, the werewolf, the lichen, the squatch, the Sasquatch, indigo, the Yeti, you know what I'm saying? The werewolf, whatever. It's all the same thing. So to get into that, you got to get into the history of, again, us and where it went wrong with us. So there's a brother named Roz Ben who's real dope. He's one of the only other people I heard talk about the Heryshaf. And when you get into them, right, this is, and whenever they get into Greek, this is a Wikipedia joint, so they go to grain. However, checking it against some books is relevant. It checked out. So in that you have the Heryshaf or the Heryshaf, right, which means he who is on the lake. So these were the people that live on the Great Lake. But the Great Lakes, remember, were what we today call the ocean. He was identified and existed at Heracleopolis, right? And he was identified again with Ra and Osiris. He was also identified with Apollo. See, remember, they always do things in the name of the mythological god that they're doing the rituals to. So when they fought or shot the joint at the firmament, you can see the ram horns, right? Remember I showed you? See the ram horns, right? So peep game, and see the red, look at the color. The red and the black, right? So oh, so when you look at Heryshaf, here you go, look. See? You see the staff? See? The black, the fish, which again is Pisces, which to them is Jesus, right? So this is them attacking it under Heryshaf. Why him? Or who are they? They, again, came under, boom, okay, sometimes reanalyzed as Heryshaf, he who is over strength. One of his titles, ruler of the riverbanks. See? Heryshaf was a creator and a fertility god who was born at the primeval waters and is pictured with a man with the head of a ram, or as a man. The site goes back to the early dynastic period or the old kingdom of Egypt. The site was called Noessi, Noescent. the demotic, right, which is pronounced Coptic, right, Heriocalypse Magna, during the Hellenistic period. You know about the Hellenists, right? And the Roman Empire, and the Initia in the so-called Arabic. No remains of the Old Kingdom temple survive. Finders Petrie remains the temple at the site of the 12th dynasty. The 12th dynasty temple was rebuilt during the 18th, right? But they were wiped out because they was on that real, what we would consider dark type ritual magic. They was like Papa Doc and them in Haiti. There's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of negative pre-creational Ralphie, meaning decadent old giant energy that these dudes was wilding with. And of them, they had a priesthood, because these was high priests of Anu, but there was only a certain quarter of them. And so this was the line. So you could look these people up. But there's not a lot on them because they guard the real Heryshaf energy real heavy and put it under things, and is guarded by things, people like the Thelemites and the OTO and those type of people. You know what I'm saying? But they put it under other names. They put him under other names like Rahak Hewitt. So to the novice, he might come in, look at the stele, you know, he don't even see that the high priest of Anu, who is Manetheo, who is the Anu priest, is standing in front of him, who's black or melanated. They don't even notice that. They just focus them on the Heru-headed god. But he's not Heru in that image. He's Rahak Hewitt, right? So the person could go their whole life thinking that they worshiping this thing when really it's a derivative, lower deity of Heryshaf. You see, the ram-headed god, which then explains why they never move up in the situation and why they're always somebody's slave. You see what I'm saying? This is how they torment them with their lack of knowledge in their own situation. So Ned Germanic, whose coffin was looted in Egypt in 2011, was sold to the Metropolitan Museum and believed to have been the priest of Heryshaf. So think of these dudes as the rogue Moors or Anu priests who then bounced and then set up what became, or what we now today know as Greece and Rome and all of that. Because again, they had Coptic blood, which means they had old Indian blood, you see, which means they, again, descended from those invaders that came and shut that down. But when we speak of Egypt, we speak into the ancient aspect of that, the old dynasty. So again, we're talking about over here, which is why the ruins over here is so old. Understand? The ones that's real. Because after the ones over there, they just built. So of all of them, one of the greatest legends was that of Osar Seth. Osar Seth or Sith. In the Kabbalah, they give him reverence as at the highest point of the tree of life, and refer to him as the Iron Soft, you see. But that's really a mystery to hide Osar Sith, who we'll find out is a legendary figure in ancient Egypt who has been equated with Moses. His story is recounted by the Ptolemaic Egyptian, which means Mauritanian Egyptian, Manetheo, in his Egyptica, the first half of the 3rd century BC. Manetheo's work is lost, but the 1st century Jewish historian Josephus. Now, Josephus Flavius, you know, he was a plagiarist liar too. So you gotta get other sources to verify, you know, the stuff he's saying. That's why it's good to know about Manetheo. Okay. The story depicts Osar Sith as a renegade Egyptian priest who leads an army of lepers and other unclean people against the pharaoh Amenhotep. The pharaoh is driven out of the country, and the leper army, in alliance with the Hyksos, right, ravage Egypt, commit many sacrileges against the gods before Amenhotep returns and expels them. Towards the end of the story, Osoph Seth changes his name to Moses. Much debated is the question of that historical reality might lie in the Osoph Seth story. The story has been linked with the anti-Jewish propaganda in the 2nd and 1st centuries BCE as an inversion of the Exodus story. See? So once they got rid of these dudes, they wiped them out and stripped their name from all of the records in history. So when they bounced, if they used the name Heryshaf, you see, they would be killed. So they had to create cults in the name or variations of the name, which is where we get the cult of Hercules and all of that. You see? And again, this was the first representation of the taking of the lepers, the created people, and using them against their own people. You understand?